This technique is as inexpensive as the cheap watercolors, but gives you the vibrancy of expensive watercolors. So these I did some very pale, but they don't have the chalky finish that inexpensive watercolors can leave behind. So it looks like a really rich, beautiful color, and it's super inexpensive and probably something you already have in your house. So, and then I went back in with a pen and did some detail line work on the flowers. But here's the secret weapon. Dun, 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 dun. Markers. Any marker that is non-permanent will work for this. And I'm gonna first do it on watercolor paper, and then I'll move it into my Bible. I have not tried it in my Bible. Watercolors respond differently on watercolor paper than they do on any other kind of paper. So if you want that beautiful blended soft marbly watercolor effect, you're gonna need to use watercolor paper to get kind of these beautiful drippies and that blending. So you're just not gonna be able to get as good of effect on other paper than you do on watercolor paper. So we'll try it on Bible paper, and we'll try it first on watercolor paper. So I wanna show you what I did. So I just have a little palette here, but you can also do this on like packaging and a water brush pen, but you can also use just a plain old water brush and water. I mean, just a regular old paintbrush and water. I just like water brushes because they're less messy. So let's put some, well, let's put these in here. So all I'm doing, this is a porcelain plate, but a plastic one would work too. I'm just gonna scribble color in here in these little spots. I love this little plate. It's so cute. And then when you put your paint in it, it becomes even prettier. Okay, so then let's, since I know how these pens work, I'll put them all in here. And then we'll try the other pens on this. That way we'll know. These are, I don't even remember where I got them, Play Color 2. They're made by Tombow. And they have a fine point tip and a bullet point tip, and that's why I got them, because I wanted those two tips instead of a brush tip. So, all right. So, oh, we already got that one. So let's put some of this bright blue down. Now these colors are not, well, let's compare. Here, let's get an orange. Let's get an, that is not orange. Let's get an orange. This is the Ranger. We'll put an R for Ranger Distress Markers here. And then this is the Tombow brush markers. It should work similarly since it's the same base color ink. It's just a different type of pen. That's all. Same company. Okay, so I'm gonna add drops of water first so that I have kind of a bit of paint in there, because otherwise you're gonna hit your brush to that color, and then you're not gonna have any color left because you're gonna pick it all up with your brush. But if you do it this way, let's start out with the lightest color here. You start mixing it, and if it's lighter than you want, let's say you want a little bit more pink in there because you know that's gonna go on really light, just color on the side above the water line. Just scribble some more, and then just pull it down into the water and mix it. Okay, so this one might be hard to see on camera because it's so light, but it's so pretty. It just is so feminine and nice, this light pink. Oh, I just love it. And if you notice, I'm doing blobs. So this is a technique too that anybody could paint. It's not hard. So let's move on to a color maybe you can see better. There we go. There's a brighter pink. And I'm just scribbling blobs, because what we're gonna do, there's two ways to make blobs look like flowers that are really easy. One is to go in and add some pen details over the top, drawing on like petals or stamens or things like that, or even just adding leaves will make these look more like make them look more like flowers. Here, let's put a little drop of the bright pink in the center of these. And now see how that watercolor paper just takes that pigment and just spreads it slowly. Now let's move on. I'm gonna clean my brush off here because it's got pink in it. Let's move on to the orange. Now let's drop a little orange into the middle of the bright pink ones. And see, this is where you get the beauty of watercolor. And then we'll do some orange flowers here real quick, because I want to see the different oranges side by side. They should behave very similarly. Okay, so this is the Tombow brush that, or the marker brush. Not sure I'm awake yet today. I'm trying to be intelligent before I'm usually awake. Okay, so here on your same thing, if you're gonna just use some packaging or like a plastic baggie or a plate that doesn't, you could use a plate that doesn't have those sections in it, just drop a few drops of water, mix it up. This is now this marker. And we're gonna do it kind of side by side and see what they look like. Yep, same idea. Yep. So any marker that is non-permanent, so these water-based markers, like Crayolas, but we're gonna try these in my Bible. Dun, 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 dun. Let's see, do I even have any back pages? Oh, I kind of have a back page. This is a page about table weights and measurements. Here, I'm gonna have it upside down so that you can actually see what we're doing. So don't dip it in the color or in the water. You need to get it up above the water line where you're coloring. Oh, so you don't saturate your pen with water. Okay, so let's see what this does. Now this is also not against a white background. So, but we'll see if there's bleed through or anything like that, because traditional watercolors don't bleed through, but since this is a different kind of pigment, I'm not sure what they'll do, but we will find out. And again, the colors are going to be a little bit different since the pages in my Bible are cream instead of white. So if you're noticing a difference in color, if it seems more dull, that's why. It's still pretty. Look at how pretty my boring Bible page is going to be now. Okay, so let's try dropping some color in the middle of these and see if it does any kind of watercolory thing, or if it just kind of puddles. Because what happens with regular paper is it does a cool thing. It's just a different look than watercolor paper. Is it buckles, so it creates these little puddles and grooves like hills and valleys where the paint will settle in. I actually really like that look, but it's not going to give you the traditional watercolor look. So if that's what you're going for, you're going to have to use watercolor paper. So if you want to make a really pretty watercolor painting, you could do it on some paper and create a tip in, or you just know that they're going to react differently on Bible paper. So do you see that? Can you see those little hills and valleys and how the color is settling into that? It still will come across looking like watercolor, but it will, it's just reacting to the paper differently. So that's all. Okay, so these pens bleed through a lot in my Bible. I made a huge mess with these pens. I love them because they're such vibrant color, but I decided, I'm not gonna worry about bleed through. It bled through 3 pages. Disaster. These are generally not good for your Bible, but let's see what they look like on the back side watered down. Oh, there's still bleed through. So, I don't know. Depends on if you like that. I don't know if this is a good technique for your Bible or not. Looks like the lighter pink didn't bleed through as much, so maybe lighter colors would be better, or if you don't mind bleed through, that's fine, but yeah, these markers may not be the best technique. I don't know. You guys decide. Sometimes I don't worry about bleed through and sometimes I do. I can't decide if it bothers me or not, because I just love the look of watered paints. But this is really fun, a fun way to stretch your materials, because watercolor paints can get expensive, especially the nice ones that leave this much color on your paper. And so this is a great way if you want to practice watercolors to get the looks and the techniques down without using your watercolor paint up. So, because that's another thing, to get these things to do what you want them to do, you've got to practice a lot. So that's why I encourage art journaling, or just painting on scratch paper or on the edges of paper, just doodling all the time, just trying to figure out what you like. Because like, it's so funny, it seems obvious, but when I started to practice hand lettering, I was like, they make it look so easy, right? These YouTube videos, and they just whoo, and they've got beautiful hand lettering, and I'm like, well, I should just be able to do that. No. No. And then somebody finally said on one of the tutorials, you need to practice this for hours and hours and hours. You know, some people will pick it up more naturally, but everybody, even the people who pick it up naturally, need to practice. And I'm like, oh yeah, practice. Well, the same as with any kind of painting, watercolors, experimenting with things, experimenting with shapes and design, and see what you like. And so just experiment. Now I should try this on, let's try these on, oops, I smeared it a little bit. Let's try these on non-watercolor paper. It's not made to soak in the water that you would put on it from watercolors. But you can see, I mean, it leaves a different texture behind, which is kind of fun actually. But this wouldn't be a bad way to practice watercolors. Let's see if they blend at all. Let's take some of this light green and see what they do. Because that's part of what I love about watercolor paper, is the blending that happens. Yeah, not a whole lot of blending going on here. Because see, like if we take this on watercolor paper and this green is still wet, you drop it in, or let's put it up next to this one. See how it immediately gets drawn into that other color? That's what makes watercolors so pretty. And then watercolor paper will make your pigment or paint bloom. It's not just a flower word, but it blooms. So when you drop it on, when you drop your color onto the paper, especially with a lot of water. So let's put some water down first here. Just putting a circle blobby thing. And then you put your paint on. See how that's just starting to bloom? And the more you let it sit and do its thing, the more it will bloom. And the more pigment you put in, the more pigment, the more it can expand from that place and really bloom. Let's drop some. Orange and green don't usually blend real well. So I'm not gonna put them on top of each other. I'm just gonna put them side by side. They usually turn into kind of a muddy mess. But you see the bloom, and right here, you can see the center of that orange and the center of the pink just went over time. That's the magic of watercolors and watercolor paper. So on here, we're getting a totally different look. You see, it's those peaks and valleys again, a lot like your Bible paper, and there's just no blending that's gonna happen. The paper isn't made to share. In fact, you don't want this paper to run, because then when you put it through your printer, everything will bleed and run and make a mess. So you can still practice though. So you can practice with these pens and these and your plain paper to learn how to draw shapes you like, learn how to use your paintbrush better, learn how to put colors together that you like. So there you go. It's just this is a really inexpensive way to play with colors and pigment and watercolor look. So I hope you guys enjoy that. Let me know what you think, and let me know if you try it, how it works out for you. Okay, bye.